Halloween was Nick's favorite night of the year. He was obsessed with horror, lived and breathed it. Every year, his Halloween party was the one everyone waited for. The kind of night that turned into the stuff of legend. His parents always flew to New York for their own party, leaving him alone in the house. So, with a completely empty house, Nick went all out, transforming it into his own haunted mansion. This wasn't your typical Halloween setup. Nick's house was like a horror movie set. Props everywhere, red lighting, eerie music drifting through each room. He'd even built a maze this year, made out of cardboard walls covered with creepy wallpaper. You had to walk through the maze to get from the living room to the kitchen. A twisted path designed to disorient and frighten. It was brilliant, really. Nick was the king of Halloween, and he loved every second of it. The party was in full swing. People were everywhere, laughing, dancing, drinking, caught up in the excitement. In the chaos, I found myself upstairs with Nick and a few friends, Vinny, Joey, and Q. We'd wandered up there to get away from the noise and talk in a quiet space. We were a little out of it, all of us. The sounds from downstairs were distant, muffled. But then, a loud bang from below broke through the laughter and music. We all looked at each other, confused. Then, another bang, even louder this time, followed by what sounded like people screaming. I looked at Nick, who had gone from smiling to deadly serious in a heartbeat. His face was pale, his hands shaking. Without a word, he ran to the door, opened it just a crack, and looked down the hallway. He closed it fast, turning back to us with wide eyes. "Hide," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Hide. Now." We didn't ask questions. We just moved. The lights went off, plunging us into darkness. Nick and Joey dove into the closet, while I crawled under the bed with Q, and Vinny squeezed himself into a storage box. We were all cramped in the dark, holding our breath, listening. Then we heard it. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, coming up the stairs. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure whoever was out there could hear it. The footsteps stopped just outside the door. There was a long silence, a moment that felt like an eternity. Then, a gunshot shattered the quiet, blasting the lock off the door. The door swung open slowly, creaking. My eyes strained in the darkness, but I could make out a shape, a figure, dressed all in black, holding a gun. I saw the glint of metal as he moved further into the room, his eyes scanning the shadows. I pressed my hand over my mouth, trying not to make a sound. The man walked closer, each step filling me with dread. He stopped right by the closet. I could hear Nick inside, whispering, begging, but it was no use. The man grabbed him and yanked him out, dragging him toward the door. We stayed hidden, paralyzed by fear, listening to the chaos below. Time stretched on as we listened to the muffled voices, the quiet sobs, and then the sound of the front door slamming shut. They were gone. We thought we were safe. We crept downstairs slowly, trying not to look at the destruction around us. But then we saw them. 2 bodies lying on the ground, blood pooling around them, their faces pale and lifeless. Friends we had been laughing with just moments before. Nick never recovered from that night. He was haunted, guilt-ridden, and within a year, he was gone too, taken by his own demons. And every Halloween, I can't help but remember that night, the night the line between horror and reality blurred forever. It was my first Halloween in my own house. Just me alone, finally out of my parents' place and ready for a quiet night in. My new place was a small, cozy corner house with a basement but no upstairs. I had some candy left over from the trick-or-treaters, but by 11 o'clock, I figured Halloween was winding down. I settled onto the couch, a bowl of popcorn in my lap, ready to watch a classic horror movie. Then, a knock at the door. It was soft at first, just a gentle tap. I paused the movie, listening. No one had been outside for hours, and it was way too late for trick-or-treating. Probably just some kid pulling a prank, I thought. Then the knock came again. Louder this time. I got up, walked to the window, and peeked outside. Nothing. No one. I figured they'd run off, probably laughing in the shadows. I sat back down, determined to ignore it, trying to focus on the movie. But then, a pounding at the door. Hard, insistent, like they were trying to break it down. My heart started to race as I stood up, feeling a mix of anger and unease. I yelled, "Get lost," hoping they'd take the hint. Silence followed, but it only lasted a second. Then, the pounding started again, each thud vibrating through the house. I quickly went to the door, locked it, and hurried back to my bedroom. I locked that door too, even though it felt ridiculous. I just wanted to feel safe. I crawled under the covers, hoping they'd give up. But as I lay there, I realized something. The pounding wasn't at the front door anymore. It was coming from my bedroom door. My blood ran cold. Someone was inside the house. I grabbed my phone, heart racing as I tried to think of what to do. In a moment of panic, I opened the YouTube app and searched gunshot sound effect. I connected my phone to my speaker system, turned the volume all the way up, and hit play. A gunshot rang out, echoing through the house, loud and jarring. I shouted, "Leave or I'll shoot." For a second, there was only silence. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, retreating footsteps, moving down the hallway and toward the front door. I stayed frozen, listening. After a long moment, the front door creaked open and then slammed shut. I crept out of bed, shaking as I walked through the empty house. The front door was wide open, swinging in the wind. I quickly locked it and called the police, who arrived a short while later. They searched the house but found no signs of forced entry, no footprints, nothing. Just an open door and a terrible memory that would haunt me forever. It was Halloween night. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my ghostly white sheet, complete with eye holes cut out. It was simple, but I thought I looked clever, like a specter drifting through the living room. Tonight was the night of the biggest costume party in town, and excitement buzzed in the air. As I stepped into the house, laughter and music enveloped me. People danced, their costumes vibrant and dazzling, swirling around like a colorful whirlwind. I was ready for fun, for fright, but as I looked around, a strange feeling settled in my gut. In the corner, I spotted someone. Another ghost, dressed nearly identical to me. At first, I chuckled. What a coincidence, I thought, convinced it was just a silly joke. But this ghost wasn't laughing. They stood still, watching me with an intensity that sent chills down my spine. I brushed it off, convincing myself it was just my imagination. As the night wore on, the feeling of being watched intensified. I tried to enjoy the party, dancing, chatting with friends, but the figure lingered in my mind. Every time I caught a glimpse of that ghostly silhouette, my heart raced. I felt like prey, and somewhere in the back of my mind, the instinct to flee began to creep in. Then, it happened. I found myself in a dimly lit hallway, away from the laughter and lights. I turned, and there it was. The ghost stood just a few feet away, staring at me with hollow eyes, its presence suffocating. "What do you want?" I whispered, my voice barely breaking the stillness. The ghost didn't respond. Instead, it took a step closer, the fabric of my costume feeling suddenly heavy, suffocating. I wanted to run, but my feet were rooted to the floor. My mind raced. Was it a prank? A ghost? Or something more sinister? Just like that, the ghost was gone, swallowed by the sea of costumes and laughter. I stood frozen, breathless, confusion swirling in my mind. What had just happened? I rushed back into the party, my heart pounding like a war drum. "Did you see that ghost?" I gasped, stumbling toward my friends. But they laughed, oblivious to my fear. Their faces were painted with joy, and their voices echoed like a distant memory. I felt a cold sweat trickle down my spine. Was I losing my mind? Had it really been a ghost? Or was it just a figment of my imagination? The uncertainty gnawed at me, eating away at my sanity. As the night dragged on, I couldn't shake that ghostly figure from my mind. The laughter felt hollow, the music a distant echo. I glanced around, half expecting to see it lurking just beyond the lights. Then, as I stood by the punch bowl, I felt a chill brush past me. I turned quickly, my heart leaping into my throat. But it was just a draft, or so I told myself. Yet, deep down, I knew better. Finally, I decided to leave. I slipped outside, the cool night air hitting my face like a cold slap. But as I walked away, I felt that familiar sensation, the eyes watching me, tracking my every move. Turning back, I saw it again. The ghost, standing under the streetlight, watching me. The hollow eyes glimmered in the darkness, a haunting reminder of the night's terror. I turned and ran, the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. As I hurried home, I felt a presence behind me, a whisper in the night. "You can't escape me," it seemed to say.